Okay, ready to dive into something new.
Always. Hit me with it.
Today we're tackling accelerationism. Ever feel like the world's on fast forward and we're just along for the ride? Accelerationism says, why not take the wheel?
I see where this is going. Sounds like a wild ride.
We've got articles, manifestos, even YouTube videos breaking it down. It's even popped up in things like Radiohead songs and Black Mirror episodes. Wild, right?
That's what makes it so interesting. It's not just some abstract idea. It's woven into our culture, often without us even realizing it.
Exactly. So, what is accelerationism really?
At its core, it's about harnessing the forces already shaping our world, technology, capitalism, globalization, and use them to propel ourselves towards a new kind of future. It's almost like building the spaceship while you're already hurtling through space.
Okay, I like that image, but isn't that, well, incredibly risky? What if we end up somewhere we really don't want to be?
There's the million-dollar question, and it's one that accelerationists are grappling with themselves. It's a philosophy built on paradox, on accepting both the potential and the danger of radical change.
So where did this idea even come from? Who are the big names shaping this debate?
Like any good story, got to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
For accelerationism, that means going back to the 19th century, to the work of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, the philosopher. Didn't he have some intense ideas about power and destruction?
Yeah, he did. And those ideas are crucial for understanding accelerationism.
Hmm.
Specifically, his concept of the will to power, this chaotic driving force he believed was at the heart of everything. Accelerationists see this will to power playing out in the forces shaping the modern world: technology, capitalism, globalization.
So instead of resisting these forces, accelerationists want to use them, harness their energy, and direct it toward a new kind of future.
Exactly. Now fast forward to the 1990s. The internet's exploding, technology's advancing at an insane rate, and there's this feeling that the world's on the verge of a radical transformation. Enter Nick Land.
I've heard that name. He's considered one of the, I don't know, founding fathers of accelerationism, right?
He is, and his work is brilliant, but also really controversial. Land took Nietzsche's will to power and applied it to the digital age. He saw capitalism and technology not as good or bad, but as engines of radical change, capable of dismantling old structures and making space for something new.
So even the destructive potential of these forces, he wasn't shying away from that. He saw it as like part of the process, necessary even.
Exactly. Now this is where Land gets really interesting. He argued that capitalism, even with all its flaws, has this built-in mechanism for disruption. It constantly wants to innovate, to reinvent itself, to break things down and create new ones.
So we can use capitalism's own self-destructive tendencies against it, like using the system's momentum to break free from it.
Precisely. Land believed that by pushing capitalism and technology to their absolute limits, by accelerating their development, we can create the conditions for a radical rupture, a break from everything we know and the emergence of something totally new.
Okay, that is intense, but it also seems incredibly risky. What if we accelerate too fast, too recklessly? What if we lose control?
Those are valid concerns, and ones that Land himself acknowledged. He wasn't naive about the dangers, but he argued that the risks are outweighed by the potential rewards. For Land, the status quo, the way capitalism is going, is unsustainable. We need a radical break from the past, even if it means embracing some uncertainty, some risk.
A gamble worth taking, in his view.
Exactly. And honestly, it's a gamble that's already playing out all around us.
I bet not everyone agreed with Land's, well, intense perspective.
You're right, and that's where we see a branching off within accelerationism. Land's ideas were influential, sure, but some saw them as way too extreme, too willing to accept the destructive side of capitalism and technology.
So what happened next? Did accelerationism just fade away, or did it evolve?
It definitely evolved, and that's what we'll get into in the next part of our deep dive, how this idea that some saw as dangerously radical sparked a whole new wave of thought on the left.
So last time we left off with Nick Land and his, well, pretty intense take on accelerationism, almost like he was rooting for the chaos. But you mentioned a split happening, with the left grabbing onto this idea. What's that all about?
Fascinating turn in the story, right? See, while Land's vision was pretty dark, almost apocalyptic, other thinkers saw accelerationism as a way to create a more just and equitable future. They argued that instead of shying away from technology and progress, the left should embrace them as tools for social change.
So instead of letting the system burn itself out, this is about using those same forces to build something better.
Exactly. In 2013, a couple of theorists, Alex Williams and Nick Strenish, released a text that really shook things up. Manifesto for an Accelerationist Politics.
A manifest? Oh, okay, things are getting serious. What did it say?
This manifesto became a rallying cry for left accelerationism. Williams and Strunichek argued that the left had become too focused on just resisting capitalism, fighting a defensive battle. They believed it kept everyone stuck, always critiquing without actually offering a real alternative.
So they wanted to go from no to what if. Instead of just pointing out problems, they wanted solutions. Bold ones.
You got it. They urged the left to reclaim its own vision of the future, one that embraced technology, planning, even automation, not as threats, but as tools for a more equitable and sustainable world.
Okay, I see the connection, but it's still a huge leap. Going from critiquing capitalism to, like, harnessing its power to create something totally new.
It is a huge leap, requires a real shift in perspective. Thinkers like Mark Fisher, who you mentioned earlier, they were really important in laying the groundwork for this shift.
Right, Fisher, he's the one who coined capitalist realism, that feeling of being tracked by the system, like there's just no alternative.
Exactly. Fisher argued that we've gotten so used to capitalism, its logic is so ingrained in our culture that we can't even imagine a world beyond it. Like we've lost our ability to even dream of a different future.
We've accepted the game over screen, but we're still holding the controllers.
That's a great way to put it. And for Fisher, accelerationism was a way to hit the reset button, to break free from that sense of inevitability and reignite our collective imagination.
So how do we do that? How do we go from feeling stuck to actually steering the ship?
That's where the acceleration part comes in. Williams and Cernish, in their manifesto, argued that the left needed to reclaim its own vision of progress, one that wasn't afraid to embrace technology and innovation.
So not rejecting progress as inherently capitalist, but like redefining it. Imagining a future where technology benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. They argued that by embracing things like automation, universal basic income, large-scale planning, we could create a society where everyone has the resources and the freedom to reach their full potential.
Okay, now we're talking. This is starting to sound less like a dystopian nightmare and more like, dare I say it, a utopia?
Well, utopia might be a bit much, but the point is, left accelerationism is fundamentally optimistic. It believes we have the power to create a better future, but only if we challenge our assumptions, embrace new ideas, and use every tool we've got, even the ones that seem to be driving us toward disaster.
That's a powerful message. But how do we make this happen? It can't just be about ideas. It needs to translate into real-world action.
Right, absolutely. And that's where things get even more interesting, and where we see how even experts, despite all their knowledge, can fall into the same traps.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What do experts have to do with this?
Might seem like a detour, but bear with me. Just like experts can get stuck in their own ways of thinking, so too can movements like accelerationism.
So even with the best intentions, the boldest vision, there's a risk of getting lost in the details, missing the bigger picture.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have different voices in the conversation, to be open to new ideas, to challenge our assumptions, even when they come from unexpected places.
So how does this connect back to making left accelerationism a reality?
Well, it takes more than just brilliant minds coming up with solutions. It takes a collective effort, a willingness to listen, to learn from each other, a shared commitment to building a better future.
A kind of collective intelligence rising to meet the challenge.
Exactly. And in a way, that's what's so fascinating about accelerationism. It's not just about faster technology or a more efficient economy. It's about tapping into the collective potential of humanity to shape its own destiny.
Now that's something I can get behind. But how does that actually work in practice? How do we tap into this collective intelligence?
That's where it gets interesting. It's not about top-down solutions relying on those old hierarchies of knowledge. It's about creating systems and structures that empower everyone to contribute their ideas, their skills, their perspectives.
So it's less about relying on a select few experts to guide us and more about creating a space where everyone has the opportunity to be an expert in their own right.
Precisely. That's where things like open source technologies, collaborative platforms, and decentralized networks become really important.
So things like Wikipedia, open source software, even online communities where people share their knowledge and work on projects together. Those are examples of collective intelligence in action.
Exactly. They show how we can use technology to break down those traditional hierarchies of knowledge and empower individuals to connect, collaborate, and create together.
Now that is an exciting thought. But before we get too carried away, we have to address the elephant in the room. Or maybe it's more like a robot in the room at this point. Automation.
Ah, yes. Automation. The double-edged sword of technological advancement. It has the potential to free us from all those boring tasks and create abundance, but it also threatens to displace millions of workers, even make existing inequalities worse.
It's this big question mark looming over the future of work. So how does accelerationism deal with this? Do we just surrender to the robots and hope for the best?
That's where it gets really interesting, because accelerationism doesn't shy away from the challenges of automation. It embraces them.
Embraces them. That seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Hear me out. Accelerationists argue that instead of clinging to these outdated models of work, we should be using this opportunity to rethink work entirely.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
They say that automation, rather than being a threat, could be the key to a more just and equitable future.
How so?
By freeing us from having to work for a wage, automation could create the conditions for a world where everyone has the time and resources to pursue their own passions, contribute to their communities, live more fulfilling lives.
So instead of fearing the robot revolution, we use it as an opportunity to create a world where work isn't about survival anymore, but about self-discovery and contribution.
Exactly. And this is where ideas like universal basic income come into play.
Right, UBI. The idea of giving everyone a guaranteed minimum income, regardless of whether they have a job. It sounds great, but is it really feasible?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's being debated right now. But accelerationists argue it's not just feasible, but essential if we want a future where everyone benefits from technological progress, not just a select few.
So it's about making sure the benefits of automation are shared fairly, not hoarded by those who own the robots.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that technology can create a more abundant future for everyone, but only if we're willing to challenge our assumptions about work, wealth, how resources are distributed.
Okay, this is making a lot more sense now. It's like accelerationism is pushing us to think bigger, to imagine a future that's not limited by our current economic systems or social structures.
Exactly. It's about embracing the transformative potential of technology to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
So instead of fearing the future, accelerationism is about leaning into it, about using our creativity and ingenuity to shape it into something truly extraordinary.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we actively create through our choices, our actions, our imaginations.
And speaking of imagination, there's another side to accelerationism we haven't even touched on yet. Its connection to art, aesthetics, the power of culture to shape our vision of the future.
Ah, yes, cultural accelerationism, a whole other rabbit hole we could go down.
I'm game if you are. But we are running a little short on time. Maybe we can save that for another deep dive.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so next time, we'll be back to explore how accelerationism is finding its way into art, music, even things like fashion and design.
From cyberpunk novels to experimental music, accelerationism is infiltrating our cultural imagination, shaping how we see the world, the possibilities ahead.
It's like the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet.
Great way to put it. And the question is, what role will each of us play in shaping that future? Will we be passive bystanders, or will we seize the opportunity to create a world that truly reflects our values and aspirations?
I know I'm ready to grab the wheel and hit the accelerator. So we've explored a ton about accelerationism, where it comes from, the different ways it's evolving, even how it tackles things like automation. But before we wrap up, you hinted at a connection between this whole philosophy and, of all things, the myth of Prometheus.
Might seem like a jump, but the parallels are fascinating. You've got this figure, Prometheus, defies the gods, brings fire to humanity. A radical act, rejecting the established order. It promised to empower humans in ways they'd never imagined.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Fire, like technology, both incredibly powerful forces. They can be used for good or for evil, to create or destroy.
Exactly. And just like Prometheus, accelerationists see the potential for technology to completely transform what it means to be human. They embrace its power, even the disruptive parts, the potentially destructive parts, because they believe in its ability to liberate us from existing limitations. They believe that outweighs the risks.
But Prometheus was punished for his actions, right?
Yeah.
Chained to a rock, eagle eating his liver. A pretty brutal reminder that even with good intentions, things can go very wrong.
It's a cautionary tale, no doubt about it, and one that accelerationists should pay attention to. The myth of Prometheus reminds us, we can't assume we're fully in control of the forces we unleash. There's always a chance of unintended consequences, creating something we can't control.
So how do we navigate that? How do we embrace that fire of accelerationism without getting burned?
The million-dollar question, right? No easy answers. But one crucial lesson from Prometheus is foresight, thinking about the long-term consequences of what we do.
So not just focusing on the immediate gains, the excitement of progress, but thinking about what kind of world we're building for the future.
Exactly. We need to recognize that our choices today will echo into the future. We have to be mindful of the ethics of accelerationism, that potential for it to make existing inequalities worse, or even create new ones.
So it's about finding that balance, embracing the transformative power of technology while making sure it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
That's it. It's about approaching accelerationism with, I think, a sense of humility, admitting we don't have all the answers, and that the future we created together.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive. What's the takeaway for someone like me, just starting to grasp all of this?
I think the most important thing, accelerationism, even with all its complexities, is about agency. It reminds us we're not just along for the ride. We're not passive passengers in all of this. We are the conductors.
We choose where this train goes.
Exactly. Accelerationism challenges us to think critically about the forces shaping the world around us, to imagine how we can harness them, bend them to our will, to create a future that reflects what we value.
It's a call to action, a challenge, to step up and become the architects of our own destiny.
Precisely. And like anything worthwhile, it takes courage,
Yeah.
creativity, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
And maybe a fire extinguisher or two, just in case.
A little caution never hurts.
Well, on that note, think we covered some serious ground today. Nietzsche to cyberpunk, automation to Prometheus. Quite a journey.
It has been, but that's what's so great about accelerationism. It's always moving, always evolving, always pushing us to expand our understanding.
And it's a conversation that's only going to get more important as technology keeps advancing, reshaping our world.
Absolutely. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, never stop imagining the possibilities.
Because the future isn't something that happens to us, it's something we create.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into accelerationism. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those minds open and imaginations running wild.